Hi, John the Drivability Guy here. Today I'm working on this Volkswagen Beetle. Customer's complaint happens to be that the check engine light's illuminated. I went ahead and pulled the trouble code out already. The trouble code we're retrieving is P2431, which stands for Secondary Air Injection Sensor Pressure Fault. So what that basically is telling us is, number one, I got a couple things that I'm kind of handcuffed with trying to diagnose this car. Number one, my scan tool will not allow me to have access to the PIDs for that particular pressure sensor circuit. So I'm going ahead and I'm going to use a little bit of common sense when I diagnose this vehicle. I'm not an expert on Volkswagens, but I do know quite a bit about secondary air injection sensors and circuits themselves. So unlike every other car, or much not unlike any other car I should say, this actually has a check valve, a little electric solenoid in the back, kind of bolted by the exhaust manifold there. And it's only got two wires going to it, so obviously one's going to be a power and one's going to be a ground. So one of the common things that you might want to rule out first is to make sure that that particular unit in the back is capable of opening and closing. You also want to go ahead and pull the hoses off to make sure that it's not full of any kind of debris. So I went ahead and did that already, and I used my power probe. I opened and closed that valve. It opens no problem, closes no problem. I also looked with the mirror. There's no kind of obstruction inside there. Had the hoses off, and I was able to blow through them with my lips there. So I'm pretty confident I don't have a restriction or a bad valve problem. So that leads me to the most common next fault here that I want to kind of rule out as a possibility, which would be the actual pressure sensor itself. And I apologize, but I only have one camera with me here at work today, so I kind of got to pull this up close to the camera so you guys can kind of see what I'm referring to. And this little component is located right on the side of the engine in the back. It actually screws right into one of the actual hoses there. So I went ahead and removed it so we can do our test a little bit quicker here. And I got the 3-wire connector. There's only 3 wires. There's a black wire, a grayish, whitish color wire, and a purple wire with a white stripe. So knowing what I know about computer controls, I'd have to assume one is going to be a sensor ground, one's going to be a 5-volt reference, and the third one would be the signal wire going back to the computer. So I'm going to guess that the black wire happens to be the sensor ground wire. And now I got a 50-50 shot at the other 2 wires. I could pull up a schematic to find this answer 100%, but to save time here, I'm just going to go ahead. I got a 50-50 shot. I'm going to take my meter, and I'm wanting to find out if I actually have 5 volts going to this sensor. So with the meter leads back probed, I guessed right the first time. I'm going to hit the hold button so you guys can kind of see what I did here. And I'm going to go ahead and remove these 2 from the circuit. And I'll pull my meter up to the camera lens here so you guys can see that I was able to retrieve the 5-volt reference wires. So I got 4.945 volts. So what did that actually tell me? Well, that told me that the actual PCM itself is capable of producing the 5-volt reference. It also told me that the computer itself is got a good ground circuit going to it, and it told me that not only did I test the computer circuits there for the 5-volt signals, but I also tested the harness going from the PCM all the way back to the actual sensor. So I don't have to worry about any kind of opens or shorts or anything inside the wiring harness there. So that leaves me with 1 wire that I'm concerned about still, and that happens to be the signal return wire going back to the PCM. Now what I know about these pressure sensors is with key on engine off, I don't have to have this installed in the circuit because the vehicle's not running, so there's not going to be any pressure present anyways. I would expect to see this thing somewhere mid-voltage range. So if it's much lower or much higher than that, I would have to assume that this sensor itself is probably faulty. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this component back into where it's supposed to go here. And I'm going to, the wire that we haven't dealt with yet happens to be the purple wire with the white stripe. And I'm just going to slide my back probe into that circuit there, make sure we got a good connection. And I'm going to hook my meter leads up. I don't have to go to the ground of the sensor because we've already tested that. So I'm just going to go to the engine block here, and I'm going to hit the freeze or hold button on my meter so you guys can kind of see what my test results were. And like I said, from atmospheric pressure, which is basically what we'd be measuring at this point with key on, engine off, I would expect to see this at a much lower voltage than what we actually have here. We have 3.643 volts. I'll bring that up to the camera screen so you guys can kind of see that. So common sense is telling me that I'm going to have to go ahead and try to secure one of these parts from the dealership, go ahead and get it out of its box, unplug this one, plug the other one in, do a double check to make sure that I'm right in my assumption that that should be a lower voltage. And if it is, then that's going to be the fix for this vehicle. Again, my name is John, the Drivability Guy. Hopefully this helps you guys possibly diagnose one of these codes on a vehicle that maybe comes into your shop, or maybe you personally own the vehicle. Pretty simple repair. It's just held in to that hose assembly with 2 little Torx head screws. Takes probably about 10 minutes total time to actually change the thing. So if you happen to like what you saw here today, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Thanks.